This is Studio 809.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media accounts, my columns at the Colorado Springs Independent, which comes out once a month, so the next one should be coming out pretty soon. My photography website, pretty much anything you want. Links to social media, my newsletter. You can send me an email from there if you have a comment or a question or a suggestion. All that stuff is at hikingbob.com. Today's kind of a special edition of the podcast. I'm doing it solo, and I'm doing it from on the road, which is what we're going to talk about today. So last Friday, I left Colorado Springs for a trip that eventually is going to take me to where I'm at right now, which is Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota. I did it by way of stopping through Rapid City, South Dakota, where I lived some 45 years ago while I was in the Air Force. So, went to Rapid City Friday, got there, it's about an 8-hour drive, so got there Friday afternoon, and then spent Friday night there, all day Saturday night, and then left Sunday morning. While I was in Rapid City, went to Mount Rushmore. If you've never been there, I highly suggest you go visit. It's a beautiful place, and it's changed quite a bit since I was there. Not the monuments, obviously, but the visitor center and everything. And if you've ever watched the really great Hitchcock movie North by Northwest, you'll know that a good chunk of that movie toward the end takes place in both Rapid City and also at Mount Rushmore. As a side piece of trivia, the visitor center that's featured in the movie was the actual visitor center, and it was the visitor center that was still there when I lived there back in the 70s and 80s. It's all been torn down and replaced with a much bigger and much more modern and very attractive experience there. So anyway, I have one pro tip if you want to go to Mount Rushmore. First one is to go early in the morning, early in the day, when the sun is at your back and shining directly on the monument and not backlighting it. That is the best light. Also, time your visit so that you get there when the sun is directly facing it, so there's no shadows from one face over another face. That makes for the best pictures. The second thing is to go back there in the evening, at night after dark, when they light up the monument with these huge lights. The entire thing gets lit up. It is a gorgeous effect and really is pretty. Admittance to Mount Rushmore National Memorial is free, but you do have to pay for parking because the parking is run by a concessionaire. Parking is $10. It's $5 if you're a senior citizen. Your National Park Pass, if you have one like I do, is not valid for parking, so you have to pay for parking. But it's good for 24 hours. So if you go there in the morning and you come back in the afternoon or in the evening to look at it at night, you can still get in there. When I went there in the evening in this past trip, and if you've watched my Facebook page, you know I posted a picture on there of it lit up at night. Late in the evening, before they're, an hour before they're ready to close, they don't even have the gates down. You can just drive in, go look at it, and then drive out and not have to worry about paying for it. So, visited Rapid City Friday night, Saturday night, and then left there Sunday and drove up here to the town of Medora, North Dakota. It's about a 4-hour drive across some very flat, I shouldn't say flat, rolling hills kind of land. Medora is a nice town, but it's a very small town. And it, the main entrance to the park, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here, is right in town. Is right off of I-94, and there are very limited services. There's one gas station that is not pay at the pump. So if you go to this gas station, which is at a convenience store and pretty much the only store here in town, you do have to go in with your credit card or cash and pay, and then go back out and pay for, pump your gas and come back in and retrieve your card. There's no grocery store in town. The convenience store has some items, but more drinks than anything else, and snacks, not really any food per se. There seems to be a number of restaurants in town. I am not partaking of those. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. and not many places to stay. I am staying at the place called the Americ Inn, Americ, capital INN. It is very nice. It's not cheap, but it is very nice. The rooms are nice and big. The amenities are very modern. The place is exceptionally clean. It is right off the main road in town. So I'm pretty happy with it. It's been a very nice place to stay. The Wi-Fi works great, pretty decent number of channels on the cable and everything. So pretty nice place to stay. People very friendly. So let's talk about this visit to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The park was established in the late 70s. It's very big. There is a south unit, which is where I'm at right now. There is a north unit that's about 60 miles away. You have to go east a bit to Highway 85 and then go north about another 50 miles to get there. It's a bit smaller. And then there's another unit called the Elkhorn Ranch unit. I have not been there yet. So on my first trip here, I got here Sunday afternoon, and I didn't leave Rapid City very early. I knew I had 4 hours. I couldn't check in until 4 o'clock. But I got here around 2:30-ish. Went over to the visitor center near here and got some information on where to go hiking, bought some souvenirs, came back to the hotel, and they were able to actually get me in about a half hour earlier than check-in time because the room was ready. I had looked at the various apps that I have and realized that, number one, it might be a good night to get Milky Way photos, and I'd kind of planned on that. And also the next morning looked like it was going to be good for sunrise pictures. And I'd already planned on taking pictures of the Milky Way from the north unit. So I decided to just, that was going to be nice to do that. Now, before I left, and in my preparation for this trip, I bought a big piece of 4-inch thick, high-density, very firm foam to turn the back of the Jeep into basically sleeping quarters for me for this trip to go to the north unit. So I went up north. It takes a solid hour to get there, a little bit longer actually. Found a place on the Riverbend Overlook, checked it out prior to the sun setting and figured this would be a good place for Milky Way pictures. And about 11:30, it finally got dark enough where I could see the Milky Way, and the moon was down, and the earth and the sun was down enough that below the horizon it got dark. Things were very dark there. However, it was also windy as all get out. And when you take Milky Way shots, you need a very steady camera because you need to do a long exposure. So I did the best I could, used all the tricks up my sleeve, anchored the camera down pretty well, and, used my camera bag, which is pretty heavy, to hold the tripod steady. And I've looked at the pictures a little bit. I need to use my big screen on my computer at home, which is a better monitor, better video card to process the pictures. But so far they look like they came out okay. So I'm thinking it worked out pretty well. Slept in the Jeep, slept actually pretty comfortably. The thing actually works out pretty well. The next morning it turned out, however, that sunrise was kind of a bust. So I decided just to drive back down to Medora. It did turn out that there was some very nice, I should say there was a herd of bison, and this park is known for its bison. In the road on the way out of the park, within sight of the exit of the park, and took a lot of pictures of that, shot some video, which I posted on my Facebook page. You may not know it, but I didn't realize it till I was out here that bison make a lot of noise, and grunting and groaning and sniffing and snorting and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty interesting. So that was pretty much it. So I got here Monday morning and napped a little bit because I was kind of tired, even though I'd slept in the car pretty well. I didn't get a lot of sleep. I should say a lot of sleep, not a duration of sleep. So we get fast forward to Monday. Now, it has been very hot through most of the country, including here. Temperatures here were in the 90s, approaching 100. Try to get an early start for a hike I had planned. And the one I looked at doing was the Lower Paddock Creek Trail, which starts near a place called Pleasant Valley Ranch, which is in the South Unit. So I did do that hike. There was a lot of bison near the start of the hike. There was also some wild horses. Lots of prairie dogs. This place has got prairie dogs like you wouldn't believe, and they make a lot of noise. One of the things you need to know if you're going to come up here in the summer is that there are a lot of biting flies. And I do mean bite. I slapped a couple and killed them and left blood. So definitely bring bug spray and take it with you on a hike. I didn't take it with me on the hike I did because it's supposed to be sweat proof. Well, it turns out by the time I got to the turnaround point, they were biting again because the bug spray had sweated off of me and it was a little miserable coming back. There's also lots of grasshoppers, and they'll get in your car if you leave the door open, and they'll be a pain in the neck. So lots of grasshoppers, lots of biting flies, so be aware of that. Make sure you're well hydrated. Bring sunscreen because there's not much shade around here, and you'll need to protect yourself from the sun. So anyway, I did this hike on the Lower Paddock Creek Trail. It was about 7.4-ish miles round trip. It was a lot of sun. It was very pretty. I was the only person I saw out there. I didn't see another soul out there after the parking lot for the trailhead. On the way back, there was a huge bison sitting right in the middle of the trail. And it was a part of the trail that was on a shelf edge next to a ravine. I was able to get around him, and he was not too interested in me. And I did post a video of this. You'll see it online. The thing you need to know is that right now it's mating season for the bison. So they're kind of in a mood, and they're not up for any games or anything like that. And as a matter of fact, somebody was attacked by a bison here just last week. Now, I don't know the circumstances, if it was just a bison that was just ornery, or if this person was trying to do the usual dumb thing tourists do and try to go pet the bison or something like that. In any case, it happened. So I assessed the situation, figured out a way around it, and everything went just fine. Later that afternoon, after taking a shower at the hotel and resting for a bit, I drove through the park, and there were hundreds and hundreds of bison to be seen. A lot of them in the road, blocking the road. Lots of photo ops. I shot an embarrassingly large number of photos of bison. It's almost embarrassing how many pictures I took. I will be posting some of those, and there may be some posted by the time you hear this on my Facebook page, and I need to get some stuff on Instagram too. Anyway, lots of bison. They are an incredible creature. They are huge, but they're also fast. It's amazing watching one of these 2,000-pound animals galloping through a field. It is just incredible to watch. They're gorgeous animals, very big, iconic Western United States type of a thing. So did get to see a lot of those. Very pretty, but you got to keep your distance. It was interesting because on the way out, I got stopped by a lot of bison in the road. I'm trying to get out of the park. People are coming into the park, and basically there's this huge herd of bison separating me trying to leave and people trying to, driving in towards the park. And we're a couple miles into the park. So I stopped to get out of the car, had my big telephoto lens on the camera, and was taking pictures of them. And as I'm taking pictures, now I got the engine running, I got the door open. I'm between, basically near the door. If I have to jump in, I can jump into the car. But the bison didn't care that I was there. They walked right past me within 10, 15 feet of me and did not give any indication that they either knew that I was there, or if they did know I was there, that they didn't care. But I also did not act threatening. I stayed very still, didn't move fast, did not go near them, let them come past me. So in any case, it was pretty cool to see that. There's also a lot of wild horses in this park, and I did get to see some of those. They are gorgeous, gorgeous animals too. So all in all, that first full day here was a lot of fun, very packed, very packed, a lot of stuff to do that day. I was going to take some Milky Way pictures at the Pleasant Valley Ranch, but the clouds came in and it was also windy again, and I figured it was just a good night to get to sleep, so I did not do that. The next morning, well, let's fast forward. We get to today. I'm recording this Tuesday night. You're going to hear it Wednesday. Was my third day, my second full day here at the park. And I hiked the Painted Canyon Trail. Now, there's visitor center at different sections of this park. So there's a big visitor center here at the south entrance, south unit. There's one about 6 or 8 miles east of here on I-94. It is a visitor center called the Painted Canyon Visitor Center. It is also a rest stop on the interstate, which is kind of cool. Now, the visitor center is open seasonally. I believe the rest stop is open year-round. And the Park Service is actually refurbishing or doing some kind of maintenance work on the visitor center and the rest area, which has bathroom facilities. They are, but doesn't interfere with you using anything. In any case, there's 2 trails there. One real short nature trail, and then another one called the Painted Canyon Trail. The Painted Canyon Trail drops down into the canyon. And I guess the best way to describe the canyon is being like the Paint Mines Park in eastern El Paso County, although I will say the Paint Mines Park is a bit different. It's much more colorful than this place is, and it also has, this area has a lot of vegetation. Now, not trees necessarily, except in some areas, but a lot of vegetation, a lot of green, a lot of wildflowers, things like that. So I hiked the Painted Canyon Trail from the visitor center to where it met the upper Paddock Creek Trail, and then back, and it was a little over 4 miles, not quite 4.5 miles. Nice hike. Is a steep climb down, which means it's a steep climb up. And when I got up to the top, it started raining pretty good, but fortunately I was pretty close to the car, and it also didn't last for long. It got wet, but not terribly wet, and didn't get any of my equipment damaged, like my camera or anything like that. So it's nice. There was no wildlife to see. I did not see any horses, did not see any bison, did not see any prairie dogs down there. A lot of grasshoppers and apparently a lot of biting flies, but I had my DEET spray on me and it did not pose a problem. We also had a lot of cloud cover. As I mentioned, it rained. So even though it was in the upper 80s, it didn't feel so bad because it wasn't the unfiltered sun beating down on me. It was a pretty nice place. So afterwards, I went to the town of Dickinson, which is about another, 18 miles further east from here. It's the next really town of any decent size. And I went there to get some more supplies, foodstuffs and things like that, snacks, which I just can't get here in town. Fueled up the Jeep, washed it, because with driving through these plain states, they ended up with a lot of dead bugs on the front of the Jeep, and it took some scrubbing to get them off. It's not entirely clean, but it's cleaner than it was and doesn't look so terrible and not filthy. And then came back into town. Then this evening I went back into the park. I shot some pictures of sunset, which came out pretty nice. Saw a lot more bison and wild horses. What was interesting was on Monday, the bison were in the lower part of the park near the Pleasant Valley Ranch, and there was a lot of them down there. Today they weren't down there, but they were up in the higher parts of the park. But there were more horses visible down in the lower part of the park, so kind of interesting how that happened. So we lead us to Wednesday when you're hearing this, and I'm not sure what I'm doing on Wednesday. I had heard that there was this very pretty state park in Montana near the town of Glendive, and that is about an hour west of here. The place is called Makoshika State Park, and I'm considering visiting there, but I'm also thinking about going to the Elkhorn Ranch unit, here in the park. So I'm not sure which way I'm going to go in the morning. I probably won't know until I get up. And we'll go there. So I'm going to do one or the other. So a couple little pieces of trivia. Now, you may not know this, but we tend to abbreviate, we being us non-national parks service people, tend to abbreviate parks by their name. So Rocky Mountain National Park, we always abbreviate it RMNP. But in reality, the naming protocol for National Park Service sites is use the first two letters of the first name of the park and the first two letters of the second name of the park. So this is Theodore Roosevelt National Park, so it's actually abbreviated THRO. Rocky Mountain National Park is actually abbreviated ROMO, ROMO. And that pretty much is standard. If the park has just one name, like Yosemite, you use the first four letters. So Yosemite is YOSE. So if you're ever looking to find a park on the website, you go to nps.gov/ and put in the first four letters of the name if it's one name, or the two letters of the first name and the two letters of the second name, and that's how you'll find the park. And it pretty much works almost entirely. There's a couple of exceptions. Colorado National Monument is not COLO, as you would expect. That belongs to something else, so it's COLM, and I guess for Colorado Monument or something like that. But little piece of arcane trivia for you. So all in all, I highly recommend coming out here. You really got to want it. I did the trip up here in two legs, and I'm checking on the trip back, because I plan on doing that in one drive, and it looks like it's about a 10-hour drive from here to Colorado Springs, depending on traffic. So between 9.5 and 10 to 10.5 hours. And I'll be doing that on Thursday, the day after you hear this. And hopefully we'll get it done. If I get tired or something like that, I can just nap in the Jeep for a while. But I want to get back Thursday. And I miss seeing my dog, I miss seeing my family, and I miss being at home. And I'm looking forward to it. So that is a brief synopsis of visiting both Rapid City, which I really like. Rapid City, like I said, I lived there about 45 years ago. Mount Rushmore, which I absolutely adore, and you must see it. If you don't have any other time to do anything else, you must see Mount Rushmore. And Theodore Roosevelt National Park, which has been on my bucket list for quite a while. I enjoy seeing all of them. So that is my on-the-road report of visiting here. Depending on what I do tomorrow or the day you listen to this, Wednesday, I'll update that in a future podcast. I thought about waiting on this podcast till Thursday and updating it with all the way up to Wednesday, but I'm going to be too busy doing other stuff on Wednesday and Thursday, so I decided just to go ahead with this. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you are listening to this podcast on Stitcher, know that Stitcher is going away, so you'll have to sign up for this podcast or start to follow it on a different platform, whether you use Google or you use SoundCloud or Apple or something like that. You'll need to find another way to listen to this podcast. Secondly, for the Patreon supporters, listen up. We had a campfire chat back this fall, which was only for Patreon supporters, where we kind of had this very fun, informal get-together of Patreon followers and supporters, and talked about what we're going to do. We're going to have another one of those in about a month or so, probably sometime around Labor Day, and we're all going to get together again and chat about what we've done and what places we did and stuff like that. It's also a good time to tell me what you want to hear, what you'd like to know about, or something you'd like to see happen here. So if you want to take part in that, sign up as a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/hikingbob. You could sign up for as little as $2 a month, and we always appreciate your support. One of the things that has come out of the previous campfire chat was to do a podcast on nutrition. So, how about that? I've been trying to find somebody who could talk about nutrition as far as outdoor recreation. And I've been trying to, for a couple of years now, find a good diet where I could lose some weight. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I hired a nutritionist who was supposed to be all about outdoor recreation and athletes. And will tell you that I was rather disappointed. I did not lose any weight. The advice wasn't very, I shouldn't say it wasn't very good. It didn't work for me and did not find it to be very helpful. And finding somebody who knows what they're talking about and relatable and really was supportive was difficult to do. However, I did find somebody in Colorado Springs recently, a doctor who I signed up with for a nominal fee, I think, and they've been great. And I've dropped close to 20 pounds, which I feel better, look better. I'm definitely healthier. And I don't know that I'm going to have them on the podcast, but we're going to talk about that more in the future, about what that diet was like. And it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't any fad diet, anything like that. Just a lot of common sense. Really did appreciate it. So we're going to do something about that pretty soon. So the person who suggested a nutritionist, I've tried, but I have something to give you in that regard as far as a podcast. But I also say that if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I have the healthy hiker, Alicia Philly, on the podcast occasionally. She's a physical therapist, an avid hiker, and she has great advice about how to stay fit and how to be prepared and how to avoid injuries, and also a little bit about nutrition. So highly recommend you follow the healthy hiker. Alicia, she's great. I actually had the opportunity after many years, or I should say at least many podcasts, of doing it over Zoom or on the phone, to actually meet her in person when her and her family came through Colorado Springs just prior to my leaving on this trip. And we went for a hike together, hiked at Mount Muskoka. Wonderful person, great family. Really enjoyed it. So follow Alicia Philly, the healthy hiker, and subscribe to her newsletter. She has a great newsletter, lots of good information, not a heavy read, but packs in a lot of information. So I highly recommend that you follow her. So I think that's all I have for today. As always, we appreciate your support. I think we'll have Kevin back next week on the podcast. But in any case, this has been the Outdoors Hiking About podcast. And just real quick, if you have any questions, I know I covered a lot of stuff here about visiting Theodore Roosevelt National Park. If you have any questions, drop me a line, DM me on social media. I am also on the new Threads app at hikingbob_co, the same address as Instagram. They're owned by the same people. In any case, drop me a line, let me know. And with that, I'll say goodbye and thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.